So let me give you this story from Axios quickly. America's decades-long love affair with homeownership is holding back the economy and hobbling the Federal Reserve and exacerbating a national housing crisis. We're stuck here now. There's just too much wealth stored in too many houses for anything to meaningful change. The big picture is life is unpredictable journey. People change where they want and need to live all the time. And a country with 66% home ownership rate is not conducive to that. They're talking about how home ownership is trapping people, and the youth is trying to find a place to live, but all the houses are trapped, by rich people or people who've owned their homes for a long time, or people who have an interest rate at, 2%. And so they don't want to leave it because they'll never get a loan that is that close to that. And so where are you going to go? So it's trapping all of us. And this has been bad. This has been very bad. 20 years ago, it says, in the third quarter of 2003, there were 83 million owners that occupied homes in America. They were changing hands at the rate of 6.5 million homes. Today, the number of homeowners is 96 million. But the rate of existing home sales has slumped to 4 million homes per year. Excuse me, we've been told our whole life, in fact, the lie that the American dream is home ownership, and that's all it is, that's been pushed since FDR. Home ownership. In fact, we got into the '08 crisis because the government was pushing home ownership. Everybody became overextended. Now they're pushing for you to get rid of your home. Carol Roth is joining us now. She is the author of You Will Own Nothing, former investment banker and good friend of the program. Carol, welcome.
Good to see you, Glenn. It's pretty amazing, isn't it, when you see the media who wants to take the biggest asset on households' balance sheet, the thing that creates wealth for middle America around the nation, and now they're telling you it's a bad thing. Isn't that really surprising?
It is. John Huntsman Sr. told me one point, he said, Glenn, don't be the guy that owns the oil well. Don't be the guy that owns the water well. Be the guy who searches for the water, who purifies the water, because whoever owns the scarce product, whoever owns it, will be the bad guy, and they'll come for you. And I think he was absolutely right. I just didn't think it would happen with homes. But I think this is the first shot of the government trying to get people out of their homes. And, hey, we'll give you even a bigger tax break if you sell your house. What? And you're going to give me money over land? No, thank you.
I would offer that it's the second shot. This is something that I wrote extensively about in You Will Own Nothing. Obviously, the policies that followed the Great Recession, financial crisis, gave a ton of cheap available capital to Wall Street. It bailed out the banks. And we know that Americans lost about 6 million homes to foreclosures and short sales. And following that.
I was going to say, and maybe this is the point you were going to make, and they took that money from us. And then they went out because they had so much money, had to do something with it. They bought up homes.
Yeah, so we obviously share a brain. That's exactly what I was going to say. So before 2010, as we've talked about, there was no meaningful Wall Street corporate institutional money in the single-family home market. Now CoreLogic says at the end of 2022, more than 1 in every 5 homes in America is being bought by a corporate entity. So that is sort of the first shift. But now you have this gentleman from Axios, who is one of the economic media darlings, if you will, coming out and not only saying, oh, it's a problem that you own your home. It's really a problem that you have this asset that's creating legacy wealth for you and your family. But the mental gymnastics that it took for him to get there, oh, this is holding back the economy and this is crippling the Fed, as if it wasn't the Fed policy and the government policy that got us here in the first place.
Right, that are crippling us.
The fact that you're trying to say, oh, the poor Fed, let's all cry for the Fed. This is the Fed's issue. The reason people are stuck in their homes, which you alluded to, and we don't have the turnover, isn't because people are trying to hoard wealth. It's because they literally cannot find another home. There's not enough supply. And part of that reason, like we said, is all of the cheap capital that went in and drove up the prices of homes. So the price of the house is insane. And then at the same time, we've had a Fed that has changed their federal funds rates, which affects the mortgage rate. So people are locked in at 3.5%, and now it's going to be 7.5% to get the mortgage. You can have one or the other. You can have an increasing home price, but cheap mortgages, or you can have, a high mortgage rate, but a cheap house. But you cannot have both of those at the same time. When you have both of those, you are not going to get people to move in the house. And the idea that they're blaming you for creating wealth instead of blaming the arsonist who burnt down the economy, the government and the Fed, is absolutely despicable. But again, it falls under you will own nothing and you will be happy. We will own things. We will be great as the elite, but you shouldn't own things because that's holding back the economy.
This is as bad as stealing our history from us and repositioning our entire history that our founders were bad and everything else. They are taking something that was not known as the American dream. The American dream was to come here, be able to own something, your own land or whatever, but it wasn't the, white picket fence and the whole, that wasn't it. It was that you could own your idea, your business, your own land, and you were the steward of that, and nobody could touch it. For them to take this idea and completely twist it around to where we're going back to the kings and the king's minions own the land and we can rent it from them is astounding.
Well, let me tie this into your dark future thesis, which I also talk about. So think about the implications from a social credit perspective as well.
Oh, yeah.
When you own your home, there is a level of sovereignty there, right? You can do what you want to do in your home. If you now rent from one of the Wall Street cronies and, have the ability to have more homes turn over because it's better for the economy, Glenn, then now Wall Street becomes a de facto arm of the government. They don't want you to have firearms. They don't want you to have gas stoves. You did whatever. Now, all of a sudden, well, I'm sorry, you violated your renter's agreement. You can no longer live here. We can't have that going on. So the importance of having the home, not only the largest wealth creator for families on a legacy basis, but also that individual sovereignty, that ability to say, this is my domain. I can do with it what I please. I can do, underneath it what I please. And I don't have to follow your instructions instead of being, as you said, that serf to the ruling class. This is incredibly, incredibly nefarious. And we have to make sure people own things. We have to make sure they preserve that key piece of freedom. It's why property rights are that essential, leg of the stool in terms of our individual rights and our freedoms.
It was religion and speech and property. That was the basic idea of America. You owned your speech and your thought. You owned your life and liberty and what you wanted to do, and you could own property. Because in every other country, you couldn't own property. You had to be granted the land from the state, from the king. Well, that's what they're doing right now. The king is just coming in and wanting to take all of this land back, not necessarily for the king, but for all of his cronies, all of the lords and the ladies who are running the companies.
Right. And they're trying to get you to buy into that you'll be happy piece, or at least guilt you into it.
Yes.
This is, you're holding back the economy. This is bad for everybody. We can't grow and prosper, if you don't give up your house. But they need you to buy into being happy. They need you to go along with this psyop because it's much easier for them to affect change and to hoard the wealth for themselves if you go along with it than if you're pushing back. Then they have to do it by force. And obviously that's not a good thing. And so when you look at the young people of this country, Glenn, that's what's happening to them. They're being groomed and trained to rent things, to basically have their life as a subscription or a service. We're seeing it in technology. We're seeing it in other areas. And because the home ownership is so unattainable for so many of these young people, because not only do they have those high home prices we're talking about and high mortgage costs, but their personal balance sheets are also decimated by the ridiculous college debt loans that they have, that they have a very difficult time paying back because they're not getting an ROI on that. So it's basically crushing that American dream for them. And if you don't think something is attainable for you, you put up that defense shield and you go, well, maybe I can't get it. Maybe I didn't want it in the first place. This will be a very bad outcome if we don't have more young people who want to own things, because we will return to that feudal society and not have it a society of freedom.